What's up, traders? It's Mark Sebastian, your only option. Today, we're going to talk about what happened with markets. We're going to preview the FOMC, talk a little about the bond market, and we'll review a couple earnings that have hit. So with that, let's dig in. All right, traders. I want to remind you that you can join me every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and I'll be giving you what I'm seeing in the market. And on Wednesday, I'm going to be live for the FOMC at 2 o'clock. If you want to join me, you got to click this link. All right. So with that out of the way, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Let's look at what happened here. So 2 days of selling, and we're still haven't really given up a lot of kind of where we were. We're still hanging out above the 50. And we've sold back to kind of levels we saw last Thursday. Hanging out above 5,600. The 50-day is down at 55.67. I don't think we're going to test that. That being said, we do have the Federal Reserve. So what are markets looking for? Well, currently, markets are pricing in about a 60-point move for the SPX. Call it a little more than 1%. Seems pretty fair. However, where things seem a little inexpensive is in TLT, the bond market. TLT closed 87.60. I could buy the 87.60 call and the 87.50 put, and my total cost for Friday is $1.18. Now you're telling me that post FOMC we can't see $1.18 out of the long bond? The range on Tuesday was 86.65 to a high of 87.53. I mean, the move there was almost 90 cents. So yes, I think they've underpriced options in bonds ahead of the FOMC. All right, now speaking of bonds, I'm feeling pretty dovish about the FOMC. Bond market sold off pretty darn good. The 30-year bond is yielding over 4.8. The 10-year is over 4.3. How much room does the Fed have to be hawkish? The answer is not that much. They do not have that much room to be hawkish. So I'm expecting them to be potentially dovish, and that could put a lift under the SPX for the rest of the week, and we might finally threaten that 200-day up at 5,700, 5,740. We might break 5,700. If things go as I expect, I would be looking for big things out of the Russell 2000. It could have a monstrous day if we get a dovish turn. Speaking of things pricing in a dovish turn, that VIX index still hanging out below 25. Found a little bit of a floor here. Not a surprise before ahead of the FOMC. VIX curve pretty tight. Not as tight as it was, but still pretty tight. And the way things are pricing, I expect us to enter backward contango after the FOMC announcement. So what does that mean? That means I expect this green line to drop and the front of this curve to swing like a gate lower. Now, if they come out hawkish and rates start to roll over, we are going to be looking at an extremely ugly market. Folks, watch. If you don't want to watch bonds themselves, pull up a ticker like TLT and keep an eye on a break of 86. We get below 86, very bad things are happening. That's telling you the market is starting to roll over. that would tell you to go out and buy puts on SPY, S&P. All right, couple earnings out. AMD reported, actually reporting a pretty decent number. In fact, there are a ton of earnings out there right now. But AMD looking actually pretty strong. That's probably the biggest name reporting. Now, we talked about Palantir. Closed the day down 12%. They were pricing at about 13, moved almost exactly what we're expecting. Option premiums really falling off a cliff. Closing the day at 63. We get below 60. Those are the levels where Palantir options tend to be a very good buy. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. And yeah, AMD, not a huge move. They were looking for 7. We're getting about 5. I'm really interested to see how far they push down premium. But the stock is back above $100. We get a little follow through tomorrow. We get a little love out of the Fed. AMD could run to 115. All right, folks. So there you have it. I've broken down why I think the Fed is going to be dovish, how I'm playing the S&P and the Russell 2000, and talked a little bit about these earnings and the VIX. All right, everybody. Once again, join me for the FOMC Wednesday, 2 p.m. live. You got to click the link in this email and join me. All right, folks. I'm Mark Sebastian. I am your only option. Have a good one.